Think about the last time that you were in the woods. What did you see? Have you ever wondered what saw you? Each year, there are more and more people who are sharing tales of encounters with large, hair-covered creatures, popularly known as Bigfoot. The big question being, is there any truth to these tales that date back all the way to our early ancestors? The truth is that we could watch all the videos, read the books, and examine the evidence, but the only way that we could truly answer that question for ourselves was to get off the couch and go look. So we grabbed our gear and hit the road in search of the greatest woodland mystery of all time. In our previous film, Judicula, Legend of the Devil's Courthouse, we explored the history of sightings in an area that was sacred to the Cherokee people. In Jackson County, North Carolina, there is a large piece of soapstone with hundreds of bizarre markings that are said to have been carved by a large, hairy giant who was also a protector of the land. The tales of such creatures continue to lurk along the timeline, all the way to modern day. The focus of this series is to continue our journey down the rabbit hole in search of answers to our questions, and to potentially have an encounter of our own. One of the first tools that we acquired was the key ingredient to our adventure. The Bigfoot Mapping Project app has a wealth of information for anyone who has an interest in the subject and is looking to do their own research.
I'm Scott Tompkins. I'm the creator of the Bigfoot Mapping Project. My background professionally is a GIS professional in the energy industry, renewables, wind, solar, and natural gas and oil. And I'm a project lead professionally doing business analysis and developing new business processes and in the software development field in data management. And by night, I am, like I said earlier, the creator of the Bigfoot Mapping Project. It keeps me up late at night making all the maps to share with everyone and keeping the database in shape. But I think it's a worthwhile project, and I'm happy to be able to share that with everyone who happens to access the map and read the sightings and submit their reports. When I was working in the field doing geophysical exploration, making maps already for my job, I had the privilege to talk with a lot of landowners all over the country in the United States. And one of the common undercurrents that people would share with me as a story about the history of their property would be weird things that happened. And a lot of times those stories that people shared involved Bigfoot. So no matter where I went, there was always a story about Bigfoot. And I started to think about how does that information get translated into something we can take action with and do analysis on. If it's just a story and people are telling it amongst themselves, it does get passed down. But what are we going to do on a larger scale to be able to find Bigfoot and take that information and put it in such a format that we can understand it on at like a data analysis level in a map view and map form. And also that experience made me realize that a lot of people have experiences and stories to share, reports about Bigfoot, but they don't necessarily go anywhere and get stored. So that was the other side of it, was creating the database and the crowdsourcing form so people have an avenue to share and report their stories and encounters. There's two types of reports in the database. There's the historical set, which are the blue, orange, and green points on the map. And as you zoom in, the symbology changes to a footprint, a Sasquatch, or an audio like speaker symbol, so you know what type of sighting it was, if it was a sighting, a footprint, or like a howl. Those are the historical sightings, and they come from an aggregation of sightings from many, many different databases, including the BFRO, all different publicly available sightings databases that were aggregated in a site called Manjani. So I picked up and cleaned up that database as a jump-off point for the crowdsourcing side, which is the database that people are now submitting sightings to. So we have kind of a demarcation of when the historical sightings stopped being captured in 2016 to where I picked up with the Bigfoot Mapping Project in 2020. And total, if you combine the historical and the crowdsourced ones in the new database, there are around 8,000, and 300 of those have been submitted since 2020. So we've got a pretty good submission rate. If you look at the total database for the historical database, there's around 70, a little over 7,000 total. And then if you look at what we've been able to capture from 2020 to now, gosh, it's 2023. It's like 100 sightings a year if you average it out, and really more than that because it hasn't been a full 2023 yet. So we're doing pretty good on capturing data, in my opinion. I think a lot of them, when you're really zoomed out and you look at the large scale map with when you're able to see the whole country, you can really lose how many of these sightings are overlapping each other, right? They just kind of merge together. When you zoom in to like Washington, for example, when you zoom into Washington and an area with tons and tons of sightings like that, I think there's like 800 or so sightings alone in Washington. So you can really start to see just what their coverage really looks like when you zoom in at that level. And it's the more you explore the map, the more you realize, wow, there are a lot of sightings in this database and reports that have come in throughout the years and decades, really. But one of the first analysis that I did was on seasonal spread, basically. So I took the whole database and looked at how dispersed the sightings were in each season, right? So you can see, if we look at the map, for example, in spring, you can see they're a little more condensed. I believe that's when they might be mating, right? Or raising their young. Through summer, they're still a little more condensed, but they're starting to spread out. And then fall, when they're getting ready for a hard winter, for example, you can see that they're very spread out. And winter, again, even more spread out because theoretically food is less available. So you would have to forage more and cover more ground. So that's a theory. I think with more data, we can really get down to understanding their behavior during seasons, but a cursory look based on the historical database illustrated those simple patterns. We can get a little more complex with our analysis further down the road with more data, but at a glance, that's what I've derived from the database.
She's been so worried. Come on down from that wretched land and please hurry. Come on down, wash your face, wash your hands of that place. Why must a man break his soul on the rocks of the rivers of the mountains? Oh, but I can't, and not just yet. Can't change a man when his mind is set. And early in the morning when I rise, my love, she flies, she flies. Miss, mountain sky, tell me why do I have to try so hard to get by? I've been eking out, seeking out, just scraping as I go.
Thank you, Mike. Looks like he's going to show over there pretty good. I guess we'll go ahead and get started. I always like to ask the audience, which you guys don't have to respond, but so what we're going to do is point out a few possibilities. Because, there's a lot of theories on what Bigfoot might be. Some people think he's an alien. Some people think he's a Neanderthal or some type of ape. Then there's one I did not include on this one, which we're going to get into, people discuss for a little bit. Anyone familiar with Gigantopithecus? Once I've learned of Gigantopithecus some years ago, how large he was believed to be. Gigantopithecus was believed to be in the orangutan family, which you'll see that shortly too. And then when we get into talking about orangutans, I made a point, I shared something about that. So Gigantopithecus, it means, the scientific terminology is actually means giant ape. So again, I'm pointing out a few things, and I feel like I'm almost rushing through some of this. But Gigantopithecus is one of the categories where a lot of scientists actually dismiss that because fossil bone records, we only have the jawbone fossils. There were other remains in other parts of Asia later on. They actually found and discovered that there was other remains. The only remains that we physically actually know are the jawbones. They actually started off with a tooth, the discovery of a tooth, and then went into the jawbone. If there is other remains, I don't know. It was believed that the other remains were actually found, but I don't know exactly what was found on the other remains. But all throughout different parts of Asia, it was where Gigantopithecus was believed to exist in Rome. So this large giant ape has been proven to exist based on limited information on fossil record. So a little bit about Gigantopithecus here. We'll talk about this here. So many cryptozoologists have proposed that Bigfoot is a relic population of Gigantopithecus. The view of Gigantopithecus was previously non-bipedal. However, as mentioned in BBC is an online scientific article, Walking with Cavemen, the view of it as a bipedal ape is accepted by some scientists due to jawbone fossils. It was up to 12 feet tall on its hind leg, and it is estimated to weigh between 400 and 1,400 pounds. And of course, this is a perfect description of a living Sasquatch.
I've got a question for you. I'd love to hear. Like I made those there's new sightings submitted within like 48 hours or 10 days, or one that just happened within the last 7 days, and they're like really big and neon in the app. Does that help you find like the newest ones? It's really supposed to pull on the surface for you, so you don't have to. You won't miss anything that way when you jump into the app. I hope it helps you. I really hope it does. That was a big feature I added a few months ago.
While we were filming, a fresh report had been filed with the Bigfoot Mapping Project in an area that had already had a history of previous encounters. We quickly packed up our things and set out to see what we could find. So, we're up here today on Mount Mitchell State Park due to a recent sighting that happened within 10 days. And it intrigued our curiosity, so here we are trotting through, seeing what we can find up atop Mount Mitchell. The following is the report as it was submitted. I was woken up around 2:30 a.m. to hear 5 loud howling sounds just outside the cabin we were staying in. These did not sound like any typical animal, wolf, coyote, or elk, that I would expect to hear in the NC Mountains. My wife did not hear this since she was in another room with a fan. I had fallen asleep on the couch. The next morning, she played some Bigfoot vocalizations she had found online, and the howling sounded almost identical to what I heard. We both searched for tracks on the dirt road, but didn't find any. Like a kind of place where you see a whole bunch of foxes.
If you decide to use the Bigfoot Mapping Project map to go in the field and do your own research, the first thing I would suggest is finding somebody who can go in the field with you. If there's, you have parents or friends who, that way you're not out in the wilderness alone. That is when a lot of accidents can happen. And if you do go alone, even with a friend or friends, the next thing would be to bring a paper map, bring enough water, make sure you know the area, make sure you at least tell somebody where you're going to be and how long you're going to be there. All the things you would do if you were going on a hike, for example. Bring a first aid kit. You never know what can happen, especially when you least expect it in the wilderness. So that's the first thing, is safety. And I should add some resources. You just reminded me. I'll add some resources for safety advice from real experts to the website. But that's the biggest one first. You can't do anyone any good if you're doing research and you get hurt out there. So be safe and be smart. Don't risk anything. Two, if you're going to do research, make sure that if you're prepared. The second thing you don't want to run into is needing to make a cast of a footprint, for example, and not having the materials to do it. So make sure that you've got your plaster of Paris, you've got a reference like a measuring tape, you've got a camera, everything's fully charged up, maybe extra batteries on the supply side for your research, bags to collect evidence, gloves, latex gloves, those types of things, even flagging.
Another nearby point on the map took us to a report that had been filed with the BFRO. The following is the encounter as it appears on the website. In early spring 1988, some friends of mine and I were traveling up the road to the top of Mount Mitchell in a four-wheel drive vehicle. Mount Mitchell is the highest peak east of the Mississippi River at 6,684 feet, and as a result, the mountain gets heavy snowfalls well into March and sometimes April. There had been some heavy snowfall in the weeks preceding our drive, and there were some deep snow drifts piled up alongside the road. Although the road had only a dusting of light snow on its surface, almost no one goes up on the mountain in the wintertime. And as I remember it, we had to skirt our way around a barricade to even get on the road to the summit. We reached the top of the mountain, then turned around to drive back down. About a half a mile below the summit, we went around a sharp left-hand turn, and our headlights hit the steep bank beside the road. In the snow on the bank, we could see several deep impressions that led up the bank and into the woods. We got out and examined the marks, but it was dark and we couldn't tell much about them. The next day, we drove back up and looked at the marks in the daylight. The tracks, as we took them to be, were in deep snow, and we could see mud at the bottom of them and measured the depth of the snow at 18 inches. In the two tracks closest to the road, there were faint outlines that could have been toe marks, but there were no claw marks visible as with bear tracks. The prints were apparently made by a bipedal animal and led up a steep bank and disappeared over the top of the bank, about 75 yards up the slope. The bank beside the road was extremely steep, and it took my friend, who is 6'2" and athletic, 8 long strides to climb the bank. But whatever left the prints needed only 2 steps. At one point, The animal had stepped over a fallen branch approximately 3 feet off the ground without breaking stride. I know sometimes big cats can leave footprints that appear to be two-legged, and there are still some panthers left in the mountains of North Carolina. But if a cat made these marks, it would have to have been the biggest panther in the world. They were about 14 inches long and 7 inches wide. We thought perhaps the marks could have been made by clumps of snow falling from trees. But there were marks where there were no overhanging branches. We split up that day, and 2 different groups walked along the road about a mile in each direction from the prints. But we never found where the animal had crossed the road, which means it was obviously using the road for traveling instead of trudging through the deep snow. We decided to hike our way to a midpoint of these 2 encounters had taken place. On several occasions, we thought we could hear something in the distance.
Get over there.
However, the strong winds and constant creaking of trees drowned out any chance of catching them on audio.
No way, that's a tree.
So they're trotting around. Due to the sightings and how many there are within this, vicinity, we're just out here trying to find any signs of anything that's out there, whether it be a footprint, broken branches, twisted branches, howls, whistles, anything we can catch.
And then I'll share a few of my findings, including some of the structures and tracks. And I spoke to some of you guys about structures, and a lot of people want to know my opinion on structures. And I'll point out real quick, I am very objective when it comes to finding various structures, because a lot of what we find in the woods could be pretty much ruled off as weather. A lot of natural occurrences happen that we don't get to see in witness all the time. I mean, storms, winds, they do a lot of mysterious stuff out there, where trees fall and collide and they look like they make pretty things. A lot of these could be some kind of natural weather or all the wildlife running on these. I know I've had gentlemen ask me about tree structures. And again, one of the things I will tell you that there are always possibilities. Could Bigfoot have done them? Sure, why not? One of my favorite structures are TV structures. They're one of the ones that have always fascinated me. So yeah, the young lady underneath, I actually had her get underneath just to show you how high up that really is. So this was actually found in the same area. And then as far as TV structures, this is another one. This was actually found down by a creek out in my area where I do research and camp life.
That's like a good 7-8 feet tall or something. Get the fun point on this one so we know what to do. Dude, I mean, the only way I don't even know how you get up there human-wise in the first place, but then get them in there. Let's keep going. Okay. That's me. These parts of the gym, right? Huh? These parts of the gym, that one.
Now, as far as the one above, talking about the rock stack, this is a picture of something I came across some years ago. I don't know, I thought it was interesting. I'm not saying a Bigfoot did this, but yeah, as you can see right here, there's a pile of rocks right there at the base of that tree. Now there is a video, in pictures, if you go online and do a Google search, there's actually pictures of primates actually throwing them. Scientists don't know why they're doing it, but just throwing them, these stacking rocks on the base of the tree. There's some ideas they threw out there, but again, primates behave in mysterious ways where scientists are still trying to figure a few things out.
That oh, right there. I say there was another faint one after that, maybe?
Unfortunately, our time at this location was wearing thin. To the south, and fast approaching, was a monster. As Hurricane Ian grew and continued its onslaught to the south, we took to the roads, scanning the tree lines and the darkness ahead, hoping to catch a glimpse of something.
Bears. Yes, bears and two little ones too. Yes, bears. Oh, something else. Oh, more bears. More bears. Oh my gosh. I seen the eyes go. Oh.
And it's just even more fuel to be out here talking to other people like you guys who are on the same page and have a passion to discover Bigfoot in your own area, and you're doing your own research. And it gives me more drive, right, to continue building a platform, listen to how you need to receive the information, listen to your feedback about the map, try to do the best I can with the resources I've got, right? This is all a passion project, and put the map out there and make it a resource. And the fact that you guys are, I think it's really cool to hear how you're using the map. That's one of the things I haven't really had in one of the other interviews I've done and heard from other, I haven't heard how much those features have helped. So it's really validating, and I am very appreciative that you guys are able to use the app in the way you are, and that it's helping you figure out where you want to go, stay on top of the latest sightings, get the information you need, connect with BFRO investigators by finding it on the app. So I'm really happy to hear that. That's what it's all about. And it's just fueled by this passion and this experience and this belief. I mean, it's hard to sit here and say I look at everything in a scientific way and stay unbiased. I really do my best. But deep down, I want there to be a Bigfoot. I want to find Bigfoot. That's why I'm doing the project.
During the last century, large sections of the Balsam Mountains of western North Carolina have been logged. However, there are still some regions of old-growth forest that remain in the most remote sections of Pisgah National Forest. The area provides a corridor for wildlife to travel safely from Nantahala National Forest to the Great Smoky Mountains. Across this ocean of dirt and stone lives a wide variety of mammals such as black bear, coyotes, and deer. There are also those that say that the region is home to another hairy creature. Since the early 1900s, local residents have passed down tales of what they called Boojum, a man-like beast that roamed these mountains and collected the precious gems that are in abundance. Boojum had also befriended a local woman by the name of Annie, who had given up on her normal life in order to live in the wild with her friend. Boojum would frequently sneak away for long periods of time in order to seek out the stones that he loved so much. While he was gone, Annie would try to find him by mimicking the hooting sound that he often made, earning her the nickname Hootin' Annie. Another haunt of Boojum's was the ill-fated Eagle's Nest Hotel. Guests of the hotel would report hearing strange sounds in the night and demanded that something be done about the vile beast that had been disturbing everyone. Soon after, Boojum disappeared and Annie never saw him again. It was around this time that the Eagle's Nest Hotel mysteriously burned to the ground. While many people dismiss the tales as nothing more than folklore, the stories do have a similarity to modern-day Bigfoot encounters that are still reported all throughout the region. Folklore is often rooted in a real event. It's just that elements have evolved with retelling and the passage of time. Are there really creatures, such as the one from the legend, that roam these ancient mountains? Just a few miles away, we were gearing up for a wild night.
It's a long, long, dark road to walk alone, keeping on. It's a big black cloud ahead.
So, some months ago now, I can't remember how long ago, I was up here on the parkway one night, hanging out, going about, doing whatever. And as I was going about doing whatever I was doing, I turned around and I noticed some weird things were happening. For one, I started hearing rocks being thrown at me from afar. Didn't know where they were coming from. Two, could have swore I heard slight rustling around, moving back and forth, left to right, left to right. And then it just kept on going. After that, I started hearing some weird whistling off in the woods and didn't know what it was. At first, I didn't think much of it because after a little bit, it quit. It was silent. I didn't hear nothing else for about 5 or 10 minutes. So I was like, oh, okay, well, let me just turn back around here, mind my own business. But shortly after that happened, I ain't gonna lie, like 5 minutes later, I start hearing that same stuff again. I heard the whistling. This time it was that deep, weird whistle I've never heard before. And I ain't heard any other animal mimic it before or anything like that. So I was too scared to go up there. And after the second time it happened, after it was going on, I felt the presence of something intense just staring at me from somewheres up that way where the rocks and the whistling was all coming from. So after I felt that immense presence just staring at me, the skin was standing up on my arms, my neck, my legs, everywhere. I decided it was time to go, and this will be my first time back in a while. If I were to try to mimic it, I'd probably say it was more like a, something like that, but way deeper, more rugged, not human lungs or whatever. It was a weird whistle. It really was.
If it's anything like most of the reports that I've read, I haven't read one where they've been overly violent. Never heard of anybody being killed by a Bigfoot. Not that I've heard.
That's a good lease.
So, and in my experience, it ran away, and I was much smaller than it.
I want to say it was late, like 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning, something like that. I know it was dead silent. There was no car, wasn't even no wind blowing, no nothing. No, I ain't gonna lie to you. I don't know if it was just me, but I could have sworn I smelled a slight pissy smell. Whenever, are you talking about the night it happened?
Yeah.
Yeah, the night it happened, that's when I smelled it. It wasn't strong and pungent, but it was just enough to know, oh, there was a weird, for me to pick up on it. It was enough for me to pick up on it. Yeah.
Be quiet for just a few seconds.
We were sitting there, we were listening around, seeing what was going on, and as we kept walking, the first thing we hear is something being thrown from one side of the woods all the way across to the other side. And we sat there and listened for a little bit with our cameras and the light and all that, to see if anything was out there. Of course, we didn't see nothing, but we caught that, and so we kept. And then after that, we kept on going a little bit, and say it was like a few minutes later, I guess, it happened again, but this time it was just on our left side. We caught that on camera though. We very well could have just caught something. At least the sound of something.
Just that primal fear moment where you realize I am not in a good situation. This is a situation I've never been in before, right? As much as advice as I give out and anyone gives out, it really takes practice and preparation to be ready. As much as you listen to people tell you what they think you should do, in that moment, it's really like, I mean, what did I say? I stood there and I said, I see you. Like I was talking to a person, right? Another child perhaps. And
it was weird because they reacted to you.
It's bizarre.
As they understood you or something.
Right. I feel like maybe they understand body language. Maybe they understand our language, right? Maybe they can pattern us. Maybe they understand our tone, our intonation, our intent, maybe it just ran because I didn't run and it got intimidated that it knew, you know what I mean? Like who knows?
Somebody else there.
Yeah. Oh man, this other creature, this human has found me and now I'm under, it's having the same reaction I was having probably, right?
Oh yeah. It's like, wow,
it's just as afraid of me. Like, what are you doing here? So we're both two scared animals at the end of the day, reacting how we're going to react. And
That was a tree twist. It wasn't that big, it was about 4 feet tall, but we don't know about that one. It was just a snap of some sort, but it was still an interesting capture for us. And then we tried to trail off to the woods a little bit, kind of wander off a little bit, but ended up running into a bee's house or something, so we got chased away. But screw the bee, screw the bee. Bee spot on this. Oh, okay.
I don't like killer bees in the woods. And on our way back, we thought we saw like some eyes off in the woods somewhere. We tried scanning around. There wasn't nothing there. But it was weird hearing those knocks and one thing being tossed from one side to the other. It was pretty cool. Pretty interesting for sure. I don't know. I'm gonna toss a rock. What was that? Ready? Ready, son? Yeah. Ooh. Our second visit to the location took us back to the area we had been previously. We wanted to take some time and explore the area in the day to see if we could find any clues. That's not it. Yeah, I do very well remember this tree. So... I don't think we went up this far, because that whole deal going around that way is different. It had to have been somewhere back within that little area right there. Think that's something? Oh, there's like a big old scrape hole thing right there or something. Yeah. So, this one just looks like it was not really splinting that all that bad. Yeah. Got some land to trot over. After documenting what we could,
we decided to press on. As the sun inched its way down behind the horizon, we took to another section of trail to see what it had in store for us. Hell yeah.
Wow. This is a good spot for one. Recorder.
We placed our recorder at the abandoned campsite and continued deeper into the forest. Eventually, we found a suitable place to rest. Here, we turned off our lights and found ourselves engulfed by the night. We waited in silence, listening to the mountain sing its songs to us.
So, we're back here at Big Ridge Overlook. It is now fall time. Bright colors are everywhere right now. And what we're about to do is take our little nifty device from a good buddy of ours at work, the Jimbo box as we call it, and we're going to stuff a recorder in there and we're going to leave it overnight. We have had our experiences thus far, and some of them have creeped us out a little bit and got us a little curious, always making us want to come back. So I think we're doing pretty good right now. Nothing on? What? Was it fully charged? Oh, I checked it out.
Something odd had happened on this trip. Our digital recorder, that we had used numerous times without fail, wasn't working. The battery had been fully charged and a test earlier in the day had worked perfectly. It took several minutes to get the device to turn on. It had never done this before. After recovering the recorder, the next day we found that it recorded all night without further incident. We also performed multiple tests with turning the recorder on and off. Everything worked perfectly fine now.
I heard something over there. It was like a something. Yeah.
The following is what we caught on that final night. It was recorded during the hours of 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. The most intriguing capture of the night came in the form of some kind of distant sound. We weren't sure what to make of it, and the sound quality was poor due to wind. We decided to send the recording to several people to get their opinions. The first person to respond was Mark Newbill of the Sawdust Beast podcast on YouTube. He had the following to say. I wasn't able to filter the targeted audio to give you my opinion of what could have made the vocal/noise. I used a noise reduction filter, removing 12 decibels. It is very distant, and with the wind blowing, I was not able to extract it without compromising the integrity of the recording. You can see on the spectrogram that's between 516 to 602 Hz, which is possible to be on the lower end of the frequency signature of what I normally look for. But with it being distant and the background noise, we don't get a clear picture of what it might be. I've included your spectrogram along with a spectrogram of what I believe is a Bigfoot frequency signature. Sorry I couldn't be more helpful. Mark.
Oh my gosh, that's like the biggest web. What do you want to call this?
Huh.
Spider Alley. Oh, look at that bad boy. Ain't gonna get me.
to show you a couple of my findings. I should have had a lot more put on here. There's other tracks I found over the years. I know I'm kind of doing it back. I should show all this first. But yeah, this was actually one of the tracks I found a few years back in Virginia, but it was very close to the West Virginia line. I know because everything's on the screen, everything looks shorter, but I promise you it was around 17 and a half inches long. Here's another one. That was found in part of the George Washington National Forest. I don't know if you're familiar with any of the forests up in Virginia, but the George Washington National Forest, this is one other track.
Last year, while filming for Judicola, Legend of the Devil's Courthouse, we got to sit down with a local investigator and were able to discuss a couple of encounters, one being visual.
We got a report from some trout fishermen that had been hiking up to a wild trout stream, and they'd hiked about 5 miles back into the woods and camped there for 2 nights. And the first night they heard something circling their camp.
The following is the report as it appears on the BFRO database. A couple of my college roommates and I decided to go trout fishing on the Thompson River in Oconee County, South Carolina. I grew up close to here and had fished the Whitewater River extensively, so I was pretty familiar with the area. I had also planned on making this trip a deer scouting excursion as well. We set off for the journey with the intention of not taking a vehicle, even though the gravel road is open at this time of year. We wanted to get a little exercise and make the most of the next 2 days of crisp, cool fall weather. We reached the river after about a 4-hour hike and were all anxious to start fishing. Our luck was great and time slipped away into the dusky twilight before we knew it. We stumbled our way through the dense laurel thickets until we found a suitable camp spot. The spot wasn't well used, but had an established fire pit, so we were pretty happy. As my one roommate and I put up the tent, the other started to cook the fish we had caught earlier in the day. The fish were just about done when we hear an almost childlike cry from the ridge above about 200 yards away. My 2 buddies were instantly asking me what that sound was with a childish fright in their voice. I grew up bear hunting in these mountains and have heard some pretty freaky noises. Most could be attributed to bobcats, coyotes, or the occasional mountain lion. I thought nothing of this sound and assured them that it was most likely a bobcat. We sat down to eat, and the sound would happen about every 2 minutes or so. It appeared to be moving slightly, but was hard to pinpoint because of the terrain and echoes, and then it just stopped. After dinner, we built a small fire and had a chew. As we were winding down the night, we all hear something land in the camp spot with a thud. We looked around and decided it was probably an acorn falling. Then another thud. This time I saw the object, and it was a smooth river stone from the river that was at least 100 yards away. This freaked me out, so I dug into my pack and fetched my 9mm. Upon my suggestion, we carefully scavenged the nearby woods for enough wood to make a decent-sized fire. The rocks would thud periodically, but were never bigger than quarter-sized pebbles. Once the fire was going, everything stopped, for a while. I also yelled out that I had a gun and to stop messing around if they could hear me. At this point, we figured it to be someone rather than something. We stayed up till about 4 a.m., spotlighting anything that moved in the leaves nearby. We agreed to take double watch shifts, with 2 watching and 1 sleeping. About 4:30, we heard the crying noise again, and was still in the same location as before. This lasted about 2 minutes, and was followed by 3 very loud and distinct knocks. This sounded like green wood being pounded against a rock or a tree trunk. This would occur about every 10 minutes or so, and would be preceded or followed by the crying sound, which was in the opposite direction. We all stayed up until the sun came up and dismissed the whole incident as someone messing with us. We decided that since we were already here, we may as well fish our way back to the road. We were all a little rattled from the experience, especially them, because they never were more than 20 or so yards away from me all morning. As we came to waterfalls or rough patches in the river, we would walk a couple of 100 yards or so into the woods to get out of the laurel thickets around the river. I used the opportunity to look for deer/bear signs. In one spot, we noticed that the ground had been absolutely destroyed with animal sign. 3 or 4 large scat piles were concentrated around 2 large white oak trees. To me, it looked like a bear sign, somewhat, but I've never seen that much traffic sign in one area before. We walked back to the vehicle without incident, and now tell the story from time to time.
My name's Jim Charneski. I'm a field researcher for Bigfoot Field Research Organization, and I live in western North Carolina. And a group of us investigators headed down there and backpacked into where the fishermen had been. First night there, we didn't hear or see anything. So we decided to move camp. And right above where the trout fishermen had been, at the top of the ridge, there was 3 ridges that joined in one spot. And there was game trails along the tops of those ridges. So we camped at the top where those 3 trails met. And we sat there, and each one looking over the other person's shoulder so they could see down the game trail. And one of the guys said, "Jim, grab your night vision, there's one behind you." And in the time it took for me to reach down, get my night vision, turn, and look at it, it had stepped off the trail behind a very large fallen pine tree. And unfortunately, this was an older Generation 1 night vision, so I couldn't record from it. But I sat there and watched him for probably 6 or 7 minutes. Shoulders about 4 feet wide. I could see him from about the waist up. And he'd stick his head up and shoulders up above the log and watch us. And very slowly sink down behind the log, move to a different spot on the log, and pop his head and body up to watch us from a different angle. And after he did that for the 5 or 6 minutes, we could hear, one of the guys had a bionic ear with us, and we could hear it walking, circling down below us in the ravine. And then it walked on out away from us. The next morning, you could see in the leaf litter on the forest floor where it had walked down the ravine. And then at the bottom of the ravine in some gravel, you could see where something had walked across it. And there was about 14-inch footprints down there. Nothing that we could do a casting of, but it was obvious where something had walked across the gravel.
a lot of these sightings have occurred from people going out hiking, camping, fishing, biking maybe, and they're just going out doing normal stuff. And whenever there is a sighting in an area such as this, most of the times the sighting is from a fellow passerby hiking in the woods. So we're out here kind of doing the same thing per se. We're just out here doing a little hike, you know, waiting until nighttime to roll around, and then we're just gonna see what we come across, and whatever happens, we'll have it on camera, and I think it'll be a worthwhile trip. Yeah. The legs is already burning.
While we were exploring the area, we came across an impression in the hard, packed dirt that caught our eye. It appeared to be a print of some kind and looked as if toes were visible. While it is possible that the print could be human, this is not an area that would be a good idea to hike barefoot in February. There is also the chance that it could belong to a bear, but black bears should be in hibernation this time of year. We documented the site for later analysis and continued on.
And I'll be one of the first to tell you, and I'm sure if you guys found tracks yourselves or ever come across tracks, when you see them in person, sometimes the details and it just shows up so good. You ever take a picture of a track? You try it with your own foot. The picture will show the detail and the depth of it, the definition. Unfortunately, pictures don't do justice when it comes to tracks. It's kind of I don't know why, but aggravates me sometimes because when I find tracks, I want to take pictures and document them, and I try to share them with people. I say, well, unfortunately, you don't see what I'm showing you because what I've seen in person. It's not comparing. Nothing to compare it to.
There's nothing. The only thing really is just the faint sound of a leaf falling here and there. Shit. Oh yeah, dude. That is pretty.
However, what modern society doesn't realize is that this creature is nothing new. Indigenous people across the globe have had relationships with these creatures for hundreds of years. And when it says hundreds, there's another presentation I want to interrupt on this real quick. Hundreds of years is kind of an understatement. I believe it's been hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. I mean, you can multiply that by whatever you feel comfortable with. And then often associate them with natural or spiritual phenomena. Tribal beliefs based their Bigfoot stories either on actual encounters or mystical perceptions of natural spirits. Now, I want to stop there real quick and point this out. A lot of people look towards our Native Americans on history of Bigfoot, the Bigfoot's presence or the existence. But one thing, as it states, natural spirits. Even with our known various species of wildlife, deer, the eagle, whatever known species that we know that does exist, a lot of Native Americans actually look and refer to them in a spiritual sense, although we know them to be flesh and blood. I just wanted to point that out.
it messes with you. It changes your paradigm, changes your outlook on the world and everything around you. When I know these things exist, I know they exist, I know they're real, but how to place them in my box, so to speak, my worldview, my idea of existence, it's hard to do. You know, there are some pieces of the puzzle that just don't fit. And that, I guess that's what I'm trying to do more than anything, just trying to get them to fit. My name's Matt Seeber. I am the founder of EastTennesseeBigfoot.org. Starting in 2005, I started this organization after my then 15-year-old son had an encounter in our backyard in East Tennessee, Roane County specifically. Felt like we weren't taken seriously by some of the groups that were prominent at the time, and I decided to take it upon myself to start this organization in order to try to gather evidence and information about Bigfoot in this area where I live. There are stories from the Cherokee about these beings. There are stories about them kind of dealing with the settlers of the Smoky Mountain area before it actually became the national park. There are stories of, well, actually, my grandfather told me a story when he told me when he was very young that he and his brother were out in the garden doing some garden work for their dad. This was probably maybe 1920, 25. I'm not sure exactly when that was, but his brother was chased out of the woods by something. My grandfather never saw it, but he was adamant that he was chased out of by some large, hairy, black thing that was chasing him out of the woods. So that's probably the oldest story that's ever been told to me personally, and it was from my grandpa. And of course, I didn't put two and two together till well after his death in 1993, and my son had his encounter, and then I thought, wow, maybe there's something more to this, because I never did even contemplate the idea that these beings were in this part of the country. I was always under the impression it was a Pacific Northwest issue for the most part. In 2005, the summer my son had his encounter, I had already known that this had happened, and it was on my mind. And I was somewhat concerned that something was running around our neighborhood at night. I had just climbed into bed and put my head on the pillow, and this sudden intrusive feeling came over me. It was just very strange. And I heard a voice in my head, an audible voice in my head that said, "I am here." It was not, "Hello, I'm here." It had no emotion. It was an emotionless type of communication. It was just, "I'm here." It was a matter-of-fact statement. And it rattled me. It really did. I didn't know what to do with it. I wasn't sure of what that meant. Many times I've thought to myself that I was just making that stuff up in my head. I wasn't sure if it actually happened, but I can't let it go. I can't let it go. And I don't know if it really happened or not, but I believe it did. The more I've done this and looked into this stuff, the more common that seems to be in Bigfoot experience. There are people who have these kinds of experiences where they even see visions. And like I say, I didn't mention this, but when I heard that voice, I had this vision in my mind of these two large black eyes surrounded by hair. That's what I felt. That's what I saw in my mind. And I heard an audible voice. It wasn't my voice. It was a voice I had never heard before. And it was as plain English as you and I are speaking, but it was very unsettling. That's an unknown. It's a good question to ask. Is that them? Is that one of those beings projecting fear into you? Or is it just an instinctual thing that there's something out there that your body's picking up on that you need to get away from? I have a good friend that's had things like that happen. And she's told me on more than one occasion when she's had encounters with these things that it was just like, it was the words in her head is basically what she said. She had it. She said it was mind speaking as far as she was concerned. And it said, leave now, leave now. That was the two things that was always said. And I have found that a lot of times when this kind of stuff happens, it's a very short statement. It's not a bunch of speaking. It's not a bunch of talking. It's just a quick statement. And, you know, it may have just been in your mind that you needed to get the F out of there. But then maybe again, that thought may have been planted into your mind. There's a place called Citico Creek. I'm pretty sure it's in the Cherokee National Forest. There has been a lot of activity in that area over the years. I believe it's very possible that a lot of the things that people are experiencing that are considered what they call the woo may be due to infrasound that these beings are able to produce. There are scientific evidences about the animal kingdom that certain animals produce infrasound. Big cats are able to confuse and sort of mess with the minds of their prey just for a few seconds before they pounce, gives them a little bit of an advantage. And I think that there could be possible with these beings as well. They may be able to manipulate our minds with infrasound or maybe other means. I'm not, I can't go into specifics there because I'm not really sure, but they may be able to just mess with our minds enough. I know I'm sure, again, we go back to the mind speak. That's in the realm of the paranormal. That's not something that's day-to-day life for human beings. So maybe they also have the ability to manipulate our minds and what we see and what we think, cause us to have some sort of hallucination, cause us to be dizzy, off kilter. I know of people who've had these episodes where they've been zapped and it has physical effects on them. It makes them sick, makes them very ill, very dizzy. And it just may be a way that they protect themselves or protect their territory without having to become physically involved with us. They can do it from a distance. I mean, I've had people take video recordings of a specific incident that happened to a couple that were in my group at one time. The lady, she quit the group shortly after that incident, and then the gentleman that was in the group, he passed away. So I can't give you this as they would give it. But they took a camera to a place and they were basically being attacked from a distance. They were They were outside the vehicle. They had already, the gentleman had already been hit with something one time. He like zapped. I say that he was hit with something that made him get sick. He had to leave. Once he drove out of the area, he felt better, so they turned around and went back. He got back out of the truck again and started feeling sick again, but she stepped between him and the wood line, and it stopped. And he was able to carry on. This whole time she was video recording with just a handheld video recorder. And just all of a sudden the woods came alive. There was screaming. There was branches breaking. There were limbs snapping. There was trees shaking and all this kind of stuff. And they decided that they didn't want to go any deeper into the woods, so they left. And it's a relatively well-known area that researcher Scott Carpenter visited quite a bit in his research. And as they were going down the road, she turned on the camera and started watching what she had recorded, and all the things that they had experienced, everything that they had seen, all the sounds, all the shaking, all the limbs breaking, all the snapping, and all that stuff was not on the recording. It was a peaceful recording of the wood line. There was nothing like that really happening, which again, that's not the camera's fault. I believe, again, that's proof that these beings are able to project thoughts and hallucinations into our minds and into our heads to make us see things that aren't really happening. So that's probably one of the most interesting things that's ever happened in my group. And I'm adamant. I know that the gentleman that was with her, I know he was truthful. I didn't know her for very long, but I believe that he trusted her, so that was good enough for me. And I know he wouldn't have lied to me about what was going on around them.
In 2014, it was actually during one of my boot camp outs. We had, there were 6 of us all together, and we did some daytime exploring, looking around, finding a few things. But it was May 3rd of 2014 when we decided to go out at night. Of course, when we left the camp, it was still daylight. And there's a lake in here where we camped at, it was about a mile, almost a mile. And we decided to just head out on foot to head down to the lake. And what was nice was there's nobody there. Because usually there's people fishing down there, so there's nobody there, so we had the whole lake to ourselves. And we spread out around the lake, we paired up the twos. And after hanging out there, we had radio communication. We had parabolic lights. We were listening to the sounds. There was a ridge up behind us and a small mountain across the lake on the other side. And we weren't really hearing nothing much was going on. We did hear a few minor limb snap, walk behind us. Yeah, it could have been anything. Well, I decided, I radioed down, there was a couple that were joining us from Vermont. And Kimmy and Darren, and I radioed down to Kimmy. Let me tell you something, if you guys are familiar with Bobo's howl or vocalization from Finding Bigfoot, well, Kimmy, she's just a little thing, but she had, I don't know how to describe her, she's actually awesome on her vocals. I call her the mini female version of Bobo. But she put out a vocalization, and of course, there was a slight echo right after she got done. We all listened, and it probably wasn't 10 seconds after the echo, and all of a sudden we got a response. It wasn't close, but it wasn't too far either. We all got to hear that. Oh, okay, this is awesome. Could have been a coyote, could have been somebody else out in the woods somewhere responding, maybe. But yeah, I thought it was cool that we did get a response from her vocalization. So after some time was going by, like I said, it was dark and we weren't getting no activity, nothing was happening. So we decided to regroup and head back to camp. So we get together and we're walking in a single file line. I'm in front of everybody. And we're all talking at all the time, we're not trying to be quiet. And coming up before we get out to the main road, the main forest road, what was interesting was right up in front of me, I keep looking at you, I'm lying. But as far as close as I am to you, there was a deer walking, it was very odd. He was just walking right towards us. And before that deer came on, it was as close as I am to you, and it just went off into the darkness. What was it was odd, but why did that deer not seem spooked? We had headlamps on, we were all talking, but it just not showing up. It just walked towards us and then walked off into the woods, disappeared further into the dark. Well, right after that, as soon as we passed where the deer went in the woods, over on my left, on the opposite side of the forest, there was something catching my attention. Something I'm seeing reflecting over there. And it's kind of probably as low as from here to where that white chair is up against the wall over there. There's something bright yellow reflecting. My first initial thought was it was one of the little yellow signs that you see in random places in the national forest. And usually all they say in our area, they say no vehicles beyond this point. But I'm seeing this, I said, that's a weird place for something like that to be. But I'm staring there, and all of a sudden it becomes in focus. It blinks. Well, and that's when I realized it's a set of eye shot. Behind me was my buddy Tracy. Tracy, what is that? And of course the words I used then are a little different. I thought it was a mountain lion. I said, is that a flipping mountain lion? I don't know why. It was the first thought that came in my head. They were large, bright yellowish eyes, and they were sitting kind of low, But it might have been a little further than that chair. And all of a sudden, we're both staring at it, and all of a sudden we see it zip off. I didn't know what the heck it was. Only other animal I seen out in the woods out there with bright yellow eyes. These raccoons have very bright yellow eyes. Trying to light in their eyes, you see yellow. Well, I didn't even think of a raccoon, but I was thinking, they look different, they look much larger. But it disappeared, it zipped off. And then Tracy told the rest of the guys, get up here, we got some eye shine up here. Oh, we all get up in that location where we started to zip off, we get up there, we're all standing on a road cluster, like I said, there's 6 of us. And we're all looking out in the woods, you see it again. And it's probably 30, 40 feet from us. And we have no clue what we're looking at. We all have headlamps on, a couple of them were bright. And all we're just seeing the eye shine. Well, one thing about this one here that we're staring at is it's swinging side to side very fast. It's got a swift motion. Okay, it's cool. It's a mystery. We don't know what we're observing. We don't know what we're seeing. But again, it was just that one, and then maybe a minute or two later, there was another one that appeared about 5 to 6 feet away. Another set of eye shine appeared. Now keep in mind, for the record, this small set of eye shine that's swinging side to side, we estimated it had been around 4 feet tall, whatever it was. Here's another one, 2 feet taller. Same color eye shine, very large and bright, reflecting off our headlamp. And it didn't have no movement, but it did blink its eyes on occasion, while the small one was still swaying side to side. And we're staring at this. And for the record, I will say Bigfoot, Sasquatch, nowhere on the mind, because there wasn't enough information to say what these were. I mean, I'm trying to go through my mind and go through my mind's database, trying to identify what we might be looking at here. Well, things change here after a while. We're all staring at this, and I'm starting to scan off. I'm looking around in the woods, and you can't see that far into the woods because even though there was a lot of thick brush and a few trees near the night, I guess because this took place after midnight, by the way. A lot of the air, there was a lot of, I don't want to say, I guess fog. I mean, the damp and cool air came in, and so you can only see it so far. But another set of eye shine caught my attention. This third set of eye shine started off like literally looking down at the ground. It was literally on the ground. At least that's the way it looked to me. And I am staring at it, and without taking my eyes off it, I point it out, and I'm staring at it. And all of a sudden, this third set of eye shine starts moving upward, and it keeps moving. And it's like it's growing or raising up or something. And all of a sudden, it comes over top of the bushes, and it comes to the clear part. And all of a sudden, that set of eye shine stops. And now it's towering over top of the 6 foot one, the one that we estimated to be around 6 feet. So now we have a 4 foot subject that's still swaying side to side. We have the second subject that's just standing there. Now we have this 8 foot subject, easily 2 feet over top of the 6 foot one. And all three of them have large yellowish looking eyes. Well, that large one actually ended up making a maneuver where, looking at, like say you guys were me, and I'm the 8 foot subject. It actually looked like it literally turned to its left, took a step or two, stopped, and turned back. And when it turned and made that whole maneuver, I believe it was the right angle, the right positioning. The lighting caught it just right. And what I was able to clearly see was very wide, broad shoulders and a big round head just sitting on those broad shoulders. It was completely round. It didn't look pointed at all. A lot of people said they see a pointed head. This did not have a pointed head. It was completely round, almost like a football helmet. You know, it wasn't pointed. It was a big fat dome sitting on wide, broad shoulders. And when I seen that, well, let me back up a little bit. My buddy Tracy, before that was observed, my buddy Tracy's like, guys, we got squatchers. That was before I seen all that. But when he said that, I needed something to confirm it. But when I witnessed that bear, I was like, these ain't bears. I said, these gotta be squatted. What the heck else are they? You know, again, we've only seen that shape in the silhouette. And we're only seeing large, bright, yellowish looking eyes. All three of them displayed the same color eye shine. They blinked on occasions here and there, but that small one, I say he, I don't know what, but it stayed swaying side to side. I don't know what it was. They say primates do that. Why? Because it's part of their anxiety. It's something, you can't stay still. I don't know, but I am convinced what we saw, what we witnessed that day in May 3rd, 2014, was possibly a family unit.
I had an encounter with what I believe was a Bigfoot. I wish I could say definitively if it was or not, but it was in Sealy, Texas. I was actually finishing up bow hunting, and I was walking out, and it was dusk. It was too dark to shoot. So I just wanted to make my way out quietly. And I was coming out of a river bottom kind of scrub brush area up into a pasture. So I had to go through a barbed wire fence and then back to my truck. And as I'm walking out, as I was walking out, I looked to my left, and the barbed wire fence is now on my left, and the scrub brush area is also down on my left. And my truck's about 100 yards ahead of me. And I look to my left after I get further down along the barbed wire fence, and there's a dark, shadowy blob behind a bush, a thin, scraggly scrub bush. So I assumed, being Texas, I assumed it was a hog, right? Because there are plenty of hogs where I hunt. There's a lot, as a matter of fact. So I just stood still. I was going to let it get on its way and then just walked to my truck, but it wasn't moving. And I was, not sure what to do. And then as I was thinking about, all right, what's going on here? It stood up. Whatever it was, I assume it was a Bigfoot, but like I said, I can't really tell you 100%. It stood up and it had wide shoulders, long arms. It looked like a football player with pads on, just huge. And its head was massive. And the grass is pretty tall, I would say waist high for me. So 3 or 4 feet for, varying. So I couldn't see its lower half of its body. And when it stood up, I just stood there, and all I could say was, whoa, just like that. And it squatted back down almost instantly after I said, whoa, because I was just kind of in shock, and I really wasn't sure what was happening at the time. I just think I was kind of in a little bit of fight or flight mode and just buffering the situation in my processor of a brain, and it stood there it squatted back down, and I was stood there for a second, and I didn't know what to do. So I said, maybe stupidly, I don't know, I said, I see you, kind of just like that, maybe a little more shaky because I was nervous. But immediately after I said that, it stood back up, it turned, did a 180, and bolted into the woods. I mean, bolted, crashing through the brush. Everything was just snapping and breaking. You hear sticks and branches breaking as it was making its way through the thicket that it ran into. And it just wasn't a person at this point. There's no way a person could run without a headlamp or a flashlight at the speed it was, where it was running, without falling, hurting themselves, or anything like that. So that's when the encounter ended. So I made my way back to my truck because it was dark, got in my truck and called my mom first and called my wife and said, you'll never believe this, and shared the story I just shared with you. And I'm fairly lucky. I think that just happened last year.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah. And it was after I started the project, and I couldn't believe, that it was happening, A, and B, of course, now that I share this story, people are going to, I know it's going to be said, oh, of course, the Bigfoot mapping guy had an encounter, right? But I couldn't make it up. I couldn't make it up if I wanted to. There's just no way. If I could transfer the feeling that I had in that moment to somebody, just so they could understand how genuine and the weird, the primal fear that pulses through your body when instincts take over and you're in this moment of fight or flight when you're not sure what's going on in a situation. And it just, if I could share that with someone, I think it would just speak volumes about the experience. And it's hard to relay that in words, especially not in person, but it is something that I think I'm lucky to have experienced. And I hope one day that I'll have another encounter and have better proof other than a story next time. I really hope so. I've learned a lot, actually, more than I expected. One of the things that I've learned is how people react to having a sighting. I never, initially, I was just thinking about data and capturing reports, and it was kind of an impersonal interaction. It wasn't necessarily, it didn't occur to me that it would be so personal for so many people to share their information and their sightings. on a platform like this. And the more that I'm active in the community and talking with people and listening to what they have to say and receiving reports, getting requests, and just talking with other researchers, that's one of the biggest things that I've learned, is how it really stays with people and affects them, and how it really can be a defining moment in somebody's life. Really kind of much like you were describing earlier, before we started the call. But yeah, so I've learned a lot. And I think most of all, though, is the human side. It's something that was unexpected. Obviously, I set out to learn how to build an app. So, I mean, I'm glad I was successful, and it's not a surprise, right? Because I was trying to do that. But I always like the things that come out of something that were unexpected, that are positive, right? And I think much like our interview, the human side of things, and getting to meet new people and hear their stories and help with their research is a big, nice reward that's unexpected from creating a project and keeping it going.
You know, there's a saying that's perfect for this kind of situation. So, the saying I have for something like this, let me find it here. You should enjoy the little detours to the fullest, because that's where you'll find the things more important than what you want.
I think more people need to get out and explore. And I think they'd be surprised. There would be a lot of skeptics that changed their opinion if they just spent more time in the wilderness. I really believe that.